So I'm very happy to be on the show to talk about it. As you know, I lived in Egypt, and where I lived at was not far from Tahrir Square. And many times our delegations that visit Libya, we always go to the Cairo Museum. So it's that big open square right in front of the Cairo Museum that thousands of Africans from the diaspora and people from throughout the world a trip to Cairo and not go to the historical Cairo Museum is like not going to Cairo. It's like going to Cairo and missing the pyramids.
Right.
But this is a remarkable event, Brian. It's unbelievable. And I want to thank you for taking it up as a subject tonight and inviting me on to talk about it.
Yes, sir. Well, we're happy to have you back on, and and it's just been an amazing thing to watch unfold. But what I wanted to get into with you, I guess first off, in terms of Egypt itself. I mean, we're talking about a strong ally of the United States, and and what is the implications, do you think, before we look at it from the perspective of America and foreign policy within Egypt, because the energy of the people, that's serious. It didn't appear to be just some opposition stirring up trouble for a government. There seems to be a genuine issue with the people.
Right. Well, first, let me, I'm going to back into it, so to speak. Kwame Ture, our brother, who we lost at the young age of 57. This coming year, June, would mark his 70th birthday if he was alive. Kwame used to always say that when the imperialists, when the masters get through using these leaders, they feed them to the people. I remember he used to always say that, and he used to give case in points, how the Shah, in 79, when the revolution took place, remember the Shah tried to come to America. And I think he came for a minute, but America put him out of here. And then he bounced around until finally he settled in Egypt. Interesting. And but when they finish using you, they feed you to the people. And the people of Egypt, living there and watching it, and absolutely a military state in terms of they lived in a state of emergency since 1981 after Anwar Sadat was brutally assassinated at that military parade. And so it was a state of emergency all the time. And I'll never forget how when I lived in Egypt, there was a writer. They had to have police at his house. His house was near where my apartment was, but he always had police. Very well-known Egyptian writer. And then the other thing in Egypt, the Al-Aram is the official Arabic paper, and then there's the Al-Aram English that comes out as a weekly paper. And so I asked Gamal Nkrumah, the son of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who writes for the Al-Aram English, I asked him, was the information in the daily and the English the same? He said, absolutely not. He said the English language paper has more objectivity, where the Al-Aram Daily in Arabic carries strictly the government line. And so the society, Brian, and it's really 83 million people in Egypt now. And if those of your listeners and those who are readers, there's a book, not a thick book, but it's a book that is very interesting in describing the Egyptian society. And it's written by a man who is still alive. He was Gamal Nasser's Minister of Information, Mohammed Haikal. He wrote a book called Autumn of Fury, and they translated it into English. Well, he writes in English and Arabic. A very prolific writer. And he wrote a book called The Autumn of Fury. and it was about Anwar Sadat. But what he did in this book, he gave the sense of Egyptian history and the importance of Egypt as a country on the northeast corner of Africa. And he talked about the linkage and what Egypt means, not only to the Middle East, but to the world. So this crisis in Egypt is not just an Egyptian crisis. It is a world crisis. And what is so tragic about it is that the people needed a spark plug. I'll never forget, I was in Egypt, and this woman came to my apartment, and she said, what we need is a 1,000,000-man march in Egypt. I mean, I never will forget her words. And she said, Akbar, why don't we talk to Minister Farrakhan about him coming and talking to some of the Egyptians about a 1,000,000-man march. And when Minister Farrakhan, when we went through Egypt, we went to an apartment of Ibrahim Shukri, one of the opposition leaders, and he gathered all of the Egyptian intellects, a whole group of them, for Minister Farrakhan to talk to. Now, I have to admit, I didn't understand what the underlying current. All I knew is that the Muslim Brotherhood was very strong, well organized, tremendous intellectual capacity among them, and they were opposed to Hosni Mubarak. And Brian, as you know, we never got an invitation, were never received in Egypt by government. Government never, even though we notified them and minister was coming. You know, I tried to get an audience with Hosni Mubarak, but I never could. And I didn't have the political savvy to understand their relationship with America, their relationship with Israel, and anything that America seemed to be having a problem with, they probably wanted to stay away from it. And surely Minister Farrakhan was one of them. So, but the society, Brian, and what happened today, I was really sad. You know, I could feel my eyes filling up with water when I sit in front of my television and watch the forces, the pro-Hosni Mubarak force come into that square and start beating people who had a peaceful demonstration, who had they even described it, they said it was like a picnic. They had their children out there, they brought food out, and all they was shouting is that Mubarak must go. But it was a peaceful demonstration. The soldiers stood by. But after he made that speech, then it's obvious in all of the news now is bending that this was an organized effort. This wasn't just some people who say that we're for our president and we're going to go out and have a peaceful demonstration. But those horses and camels, they had to be organized. They had to be able to move through the streets. The military had to give them a passageway. You don't just get on some horses and camels and ride down the street in downtown Cairo. I mean, people who know Cairo, I know Cairo, and there were tanks all around the square trying to limit the people who came yesterday, and also checking the people. And the people were checking themselves, and even the military was supervising, checking people, make sure nobody bring bombs in. How did these men get in with guns, with machetes, with axes and all kind of stuff, golf clubs, and ride camels and horses right into the demonstrators? So everybody sees government complicity in it. And
but let me ask you a question on that, because I thought about that, and and I know that a lot of people who will be listening to this, especially the majority who will catch this in the archives, really many people never traveled or had the privilege to live in Africa or other parts of the world, and so they may not be aware. And this is something I just wanted to ask you your take on, and because something I thought about is that the Army, being that the way the Army is made up of people, where I heard one report where the Army, in every family, chances are there's somebody that's in the Army.
Absolutely.
And and then the police force, of course, backed up in terms of getting their hands too dirty in this mess that's going on. Do you think, and I'm asking you just to verify something that I know happens in other countries, but the majority of people may not know, that there are situations where the government does have it's sort of like an underground force of people, and a lot of times it's made up of the president's tribe or these type of relationships. I just wondered if you could talk into that a little bit.
Yes. Well, in that part of the world, they surround themselves. In Africa, Rollins was an airway, and his best security around him was from his tribe. They were airways. My former son-in-law was one of them. So, and he was an airway, Chester, who you know. In Libya, it's the same thing. The Gaddafi tribe, that's the name of the tribe. Many of them surround Brother Gaddafi. And the same thing in Jordan. So that is so. But here is the part in Egypt, because I don't know Hosni Mubarak's particular group, but I do know this, that the way that the military is taking care in Egypt, and the way that they have these military places, Brian, you've seen them. They have social clubs. The hierarchy is paid very well. It's a tight-knit group because any leader knows that the military must be kept close to him, and he must take care of them very well, because usually when it's a coup in the country, it's the military general who takes over. He's the one that comes to power, so you got to look out for your military. And I'm sure in Egypt, the military is well looked after, but you said it right. Every Egyptian man, unless he's the only son in a family, they have to do military service. They have to do 2 years. So the commentators who kept saying that these are their family members, and will this military that's their family members turn on them and begin to shoot the people? But the military is not doing it, but they hired. I even heard early this morning that the people were paid the equal of 20 pounds, 20 Egyptian pounds. 20 Egyptian pounds right now is like $4, Brian. That they were paying them to be pro Hosni Mubarak supporters, and it turned very nasty and very violent. And it's just an unbelievable situation. I mean, I was saddened, Brian, because I'm looking on the screen places that I know in Egypt, and to see the demonstrators who had every right. I mean, Barack Obama hit the tip of it, but he didn't go far enough, in my opinion. They have the right to peaceful demonstration. But when you see Molotov cocktails thrown in the square, these didn't come from a distance. They were there. And not just one Molotov cocktail, one after another, one after another. And tonight, they're still burning. That had to be orchestrated. Now, if you are a demonstrator and you are pro Hosni Mubarak, the president of Egypt, then you get your signs and you demonstrate. And usually, like we do it in America, a group that's demonstrate, they just keep a distance. One is on one side of the street, the other's on the other side, and they demonstrate. But this is a violent, vicious reaction attacking the people, saying that they're for their president. And now Hosni Mubarak can go and say, look at what this disorder is. We need to put this down. We need to stop this. We need to ban these people from demonstrating. This is what they're trying to do, because he knows that the people reject it. I'm going to stay in power until September, when they're asking them to step down. It's all right. You said you want to die. He made a passionate appeal. I defended this country. So and this is my land. I will die in my land. You can step down from being president and go live somewhere in Egypt, and when God takes you, you'll die in Egypt. Nobody can tell you that you had to leave Egypt. You stay there, but step down as the president. But to do this, and as the whole world watches a country as strong and as powerful as Egypt fall into this disarray, not from the demonstrators.
Right.
I'm skeptical on whether his people freed the people in jail. How did they get out of jail?
Yeah, I mean, and this is because, see, the thing is, and which leads me into something I wanted to ask you about what's happening in the Arab world. Because, again, you know, if your police steps out of the way, if the army is conflicted in terms of listening to you as their commander-in-chief, you know, it's almost like he's sitting alone. He disbanded his government, you know, and so these tactics that he's using, you know. But what I wanted to touch on, if you can touch on the fact that, of course, it's this thing that started in Tunisia, and it seems to be sweeping through the Arab world. You know, can you talk to that a little bit? I mean, because
absolutely.
This whole issue of autocracy and the rejection of autocracy, but how it's like a wave now.
Well, Brian, here's what Bush said, Bush II, when he was in office, after that vicious invasion of Iraq and the vicious killing of the president of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, under a false pretext. He said that we're going to bring democracy to the Middle East. And he kept on saying it. He said, look at Iraq. Now they're voting. Iraq is in shambles. 2 million people dead. So they tried to impose this so-called democracy from the top down. And what he's witnessing now is that democracy is coming to the Middle East from the bottom up, because most of the people who are being protested are people that America propped up, Brian, and who were friends of America. Ben Ali in Tunisia, an American man. Matter of fact, there was a rumor all the time in the Middle East that he worked directly with the CIA. And I'll never forget when I was going from Jerba to Libya, and I had to go through the Tunisian border.
Right.
They asked me, what kind of books did I have and what did I do? I said, I was a teacher. What do you teach? I said, Islamic studies. They got upset at that and wanted to check everything I had. You would think that they, being Muslims, would say fine. But they had Islam look like a threat to them. This has happened to me at the border. So you got Ben Ali. So he saw, and when he went on television, I was overseas, he asked the soldiers not to shoot the people. And he saw that this thing was out of hand, so he gracefully made his exit because he didn't want no more people to die. So now, but then when the people saw that, Egypt in particular, that had been stranglehold, a police state for 30 years under Hosni Mubarak, then it caught fire in Egypt. Then it caught fire in Yemen. There was a small demonstration in Sudan. Libya may spare it because of the Green Book philosophy that Gaddafi has, where the masses of people control their own destiny. They vote on what they want. They got a level of living. None of them can say that they're poor. If they're poor in Libya, they're poor because they want to be poor. You get paid to go to school. You get a stipend. Everybody can get money to invest in business. So you don't have the same set of circumstances. But the Jordanian king, Abdullah, he made a move quickly because he knows that under the current situation, Jordan can be looked at as an oppressive state. I don't know what will happen in Syria when their thing starts tomorrow, but it's a wave sweeping. And if it's democratic reform, it's not coming because America takes out a leader. America leaves in place the leaders that served them, and now it's coming from the bottom up. And it's a very dangerous kind of situation that's happening because it's going to upset what America depends on for oil. I mean, Saudi is definitely, there's an anti-kingdom, the king, an anti-group against the king, a group of Saudis that are based in London that want a democratic reform in Saudi Arabia. I've seen them, I met with them in London, and so they exist. Then you got Oman. Then you got the United Arab Emirates. You got Kuwait. Kuwait may be able to, they're so small, they may be able to keep their hands on things. But this sweeping through, Lebanon is already in crisis right now.
Right.
So the whole area, and there is Israel sitting. Israel, and what they're trying to threaten the West with, Brian, as we have to close this out, they're threatening the West that the Muslim Brotherhood may take over in Egypt and we'll have a repeat of Iran. See, the difference, you can't say the difference. Iran, you feared that in Iran because they had nuclear capability.
Right.
Egypt doesn't have, that we know of, nuclear capability, but Egypt has the largest army in the Middle East. And Egypt is a powerhouse. Economy, 83 million people. Egypt, if Egypt was against Israel, sitting next door, it would be a disaster. So they've neutralized Egypt with this peace agreement that Anwar Sadat made, and Hosni Mubarak has carried it on, and they're shaken now because there's an anti-American twist. The people didn't start talking against America at first. But when Barack's statement Barack came and said that we need to have democratic changes immediately. But now Barack needs to step into this. Some of the politicians say Barack should leave it alone, but he should step into this and say that this is absolutely wrong. If you are pro-Hosni Mubarak, you have some nerve going in there with weapons and Molotov cocktails and beating, and 3 people, they said, are dead, 600 wounded, when these were people who were doing a peaceful demonstration. Brother Brian, I thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, sir.
And I know I ran right up to the hour on you, and we didn't have a chance to take more
but
questions.
It's okay. I just wish we had more time, because that what you just started to get into, it's the part that people don't know, and they're really not talking about.